The rumor mill is saying that possibly the San Diego Padres might be trading away Arraez and Cease. Padres, please don't.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called now, and on Instagram. I am your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball and Blue Sky, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. And today's episode is brought to you by good friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On MLB for $20 off your first purchase. That is Game Time. Download that app. Yeah, there's not a lot of news coming around the baseball front today. Rumors of possibly Bellinger going to the Yankees, maybe Kyle Tucker going to the Chicago Cubs. There's the Roki Sasaki free agency thing is, we're still waiting to hear from that. Hey, big news. The Rays signed Danny Jansen. He's a nice catcher. There you go. Juan Soto was introduced. Was that really suspenseful? But there are rumors floating around that maybe the San Diego Padres might be looking to trade away some of their veterans, specifically Dylan Cease and Luis Arraez. I'll tell you why I don't want to see that happen. Okay, I understand not everyone is in love with Arraez, even though he's won 3 straight batting titles with 3 different teams. But I understand the batting title is not the metric that it used to be at one point. But he's still a fine offensive player to have in your lineup, especially if you're trying to have some depth on your team there. And he's about as, if you want to have a DH on the team piling up hits, that seems like that might be a decent strategy to have. I don't know, maybe I'm an old school person in that regard, but yeah, I think having him on your team isn't the worst thing in the world. And certainly Dylan Cease on the team, who had a fine season, threw himself a no-hitter and piled up, 189 in the third innings is a big innings eater these days. And he's not they have several good pitchers on their team, and the fact that Michael King is still on the squad. When Michael King came over in the Juan Soto trade, he said that the Padres are going to wind up winning that trade. Well, in a way, kind of did if Michael King contributes to a title in San Diego and Juan Soto, skedaddles. But the Padres should keep this team together. They should, for a couple of reasons. First of all, why are you going to have a team like this when they're possibly on the verge of doing something that they've never done, and they're drawing like they've never drawn before? Isn't this the window of opportunity to do it? There's an interesting aura that has happened in retrospect about the 2024 Los Angeles Dodgers, who are obviously a very good team. They won the freaking World Series. They had the best record in baseball. I'm not belittling the Los Angeles Dodgers, but they were not unstoppable. Remember, the Padres nearly stopped them. In fact, it looked really like they were about to. Remember when they kicked the snot out of them in Game 2, took a 10-2 lead victory there, and then won Game 3, 6-5, thanks to Michael King. And the Dodgers didn't have a pitcher for Game 4. Remember the tone of the Dodgers, and believe me, I'm living in Los Angeles County. I saw it with a front row seat. The tone of the 2024 Dodgers was, here we go again. The team that was eliminated by San Diego in 2022 was eliminated by Arizona in 2023, that was eliminated by Washington in the division series in 2019. It was here we go again. They're a great regular season team. Dodger fans here were talking about firing Dave Roberts and that they have to blow the team up. And yes, the Dodgers came out of nowhere and somehow won that game 4. 2 solo home runs by the two Hernandez, Kiki and Teoscar, won game 5, and the Padres bats went dead. The Padres win that series, they're beating the Mets, and chances are they're beating the Yankees. I have no compunction saying that. And this is a Padres team that for a big chunk of last year was playing like the best team in baseball. In fact, the consensus for a lot of people, a lot of fans watching the National League West closely, especially when the Padres went 13-9 in July, 18-10 in September, and 16-8 in September, that they looked like they were the best team in baseball heading into the postseason. Remember, this is a team that caught the Dodgers at one point, that looked like they were going to maybe leapfrog the Dodgers in the standings. Actually, I don't think they didn't catch the Dodgers. I stepped on myself there, but they were on the verge of catching the Dodgers. And there was a little bit of a, hey, look at, maybe this is one of those situations where, yeah, they're the wild card team, but they're the better club. This is their window of opportunity to do this. When we keep hearing about big market teams, small market team, this, that, and the other thing, when you have this window of opportunity, you have to do it. I know Peter Seidler's dead, and the new owner, the people who are running the team are not as passionate as he is. This is your chance to do something. They're drawing 3 million fans. When have the Padres ever drawn 3 million fans? You keep this team together. A bounce here or a bounce there, then no one remembers the 2024 Los Angeles Dodgers, and the Padres will win their first World Series title since the made-for-TV movie, The Kid from Left Field, starring Gary Coleman. Now, Ran Matendo says Padres' opportunity was last year. Too bad. It's time to tear down. It is not time to tear down. Why is it time to tear down? Why not go into next year with a chance? I don't understand that mentality. Yes, the Dodgers are a very good team, but remember they didn't have enough starting pitchers to clinch. They relied on the sloppiness of the Yankees to bail themselves out. And he says, why in Ramadans, because they're unwilling to spend. Well, then why own a damn team? This is the team that could win now. If you want to build, if they start to fall apart, I get it. But why own a damn team? You have a team that a bounce here, a bounce there could be winning a pennant. Which brings us to the Mariners. Mariners are probably going to trade Luis Castillo. And I hope they're doing it to improve the club. To say, hey, we have the Mariners have a lot of pitchers on their team. The Mariners could possibly trade from a position of strength, which is their pitching staff. And if you look up and you say, hey, look at this, even if they deal away Castillo, I'm not a big believer in trading pitchers with a mentality of, hey, we got enough. It's never enough. But Logan Gilbert had a very good year last year. Actually led the league in innings pitched. You have the Kirbys of the world. You have the Bryce Millers of the world. Maybe get something out of Brian Wu. You have pitchers on this team that could potentially win. So maybe you think, all right, with Castillo, maybe you pull the deal off. But you better get a hitter, a major league hitter back. Who knows? Maybe it's Arraez. Maybe flop Castillo for Arraez. I don't know. But they need to improve that lineup because remember, I've been saying this a lot. There are American League teams there that should be going for it because the American League is kind of wide open. I don't know if you've heard this, but the Yankees are a little vulnerable, even with the acquisition of Max Fried. There is no super team in the American League. Cleveland's already making rumblings. Are they going to trade this or that? Are the Tigers going to go for it? Are the Twins going to go for it? Is Kansas City going to go for it? They have a a franchise player in his prime? Is Baltimore going to lose Corbin Burns? Who is the can't miss player, especially if the Astros take a step back? And remember, this is a Mariner team, as I pointed out a couple of times before. This is a Mariner team who at one point in June had a 10-game lead. Now, yes, they did a Wile E. Coyote impersonation that cost poor Scott Service's job. But if they played mediocre baseball, just 500 baseball after getting that 10-game lead, the fact that they are playing in a winnable American League and can make a deal to get a hitter, maybe they should be in the Kyle Tucker trade business. I don't know the answer. Or maybe to, kick the tires on, the perpetually rebuilding Marlins, who, man, you have to go all the way back to 2023 to see when they were a playoff team. What am I driving at here? If you saw the thumbnail and the title of this episode, what am I driving at here? I'm driving at a World Series potential, a World Series matchup that I think would not only be really exciting, but really great for baseball in terms of stars, but also in terms of storyline. Yeah, I'll say it. One of the best potential matchups in a World Series for drama, for storylines, and I think for excitement and for a chance to see something you've never seen before. A Padres Mariners World Series. And I'm being 100% serious. All right, let's talk to our friends over at Game Time. I used Game Time to get tickets for the National League Championship Series when the Mets faced off against LA, and I got to see the Dodgers clinch. And I'm going to be using Game Time to go with my friends to maybe see a San Jose Sharks game pretty soon, as I'm going to be heading up to the Bay Area before you know it. Well, I'm going to be using Game Time because Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events, sports, theater, comedy, or whatever, even easier. Game Time filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Let me tell you something. Game Time has the Game Time Picks. Its curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concert, comedy, theater, and more. You get seat views. You get a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy, and you get the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? I'll tell you what time it is. It's game time. Yeah. Mariners, Padres. I've never lived in San Diego. I've never stepped foot in the city of Seattle. This is obviously not about my own personal teams that I've grown up rooting for. I'm fascinated by both teams. I just finished reading this book here, Becoming Big League by Bill Mullins, which is about how the city of Seattle throughout the 60s were trying to get themselves a major league team, and they finally did with the Seattle Pilots, only to have that be a cataclysmic disaster. That same year, 1969, the Padres were formed, and they were also an absolute fall-on-the-face disaster when they were first formed, and it looked like they were an absolute cinch to move to Washington and be the new National League team in Washington. When Ray Kroc, the president, I can't call him the founder, I don't care what the Michael Keaton movie says, of McDonald's, bought the Padres and kept them in San Diego. And while the Pilots did indeed move after one season to become the Brewers, and there were lots of rumors about whether the A's were going to move there or the White Sox, eventually the Mariners were formed. Padres and the Mariners have had a lot of great players, some Hall of Famers play on their team. And the Padres have had two Hall of Famers who played, one played his entire career there in Tony Gwynn, and another played the majority of his career with Trevor Hoffman. And think about the greats who have passed through Seattle, whether it's been Ken Griffey Jr. or, I'll say Alex Rodriguez and Randy Johnson, Hall of Famers like Edgar Martinez and Ichiro Suzuki is about to be a Hall of Famer. And these two franchises have combined for one World Series game one. Game 2 of the 1984 World Series, which was won by the Padres. That's the only World Series game the Padres have ever won. And the Mariners remain the only Major League franchise to never appear in a World Series. And so what would that mean? You would have two fan bases, San Diego and Seattle. Now, Seattle could potentially be a giant regional team, kind of like how the Boston Red Sox are the team of all of New England. The Seattle Mariners could encompass all the Pacific Northwest, including Vancouver, Spokane, Portland, Bend, Corvallis, Pullman, Walla Walla. All the the Northwest could be pulled into the vortex of a Seattle World Series. And then you have the little brother right down there of San Diego. Two little franchises that could, coming off the heels of the Dodgers and the Yankees. Well, let's have the two small franchises that people have never seen win a World Series. And there'll be drama in that because you're going to see something you've never seen. Now you have really exciting stars, whether the Julio Rodriguez's of the world on one side, and you got the Xander Bogaerts and Manny Machado's on the others. You got good pitching with Seattle. You got good pitching with San Diego. You got two terrific stadiums. You're not going to find a better stadium in baseball, with the possible exception of San Francisco, than what you have in San Diego. And what you got up there in Seattle is not half bad. You got Fraser Crane versus Ron Burgundy. It'll be fun. And it would be a matchup, as I said. You look at whatever we're going to see is the first time we've ever seen one of these teams win the World Series. When was the last time we had that? In a way, you could point to 2010 when the Rangers played the Giants. Now, I do know, obviously, the Giants won many, many World Series in New York under John McGraw. Willie Mays won in 54, blah, blah, blah. But the San Francisco Giants had never won the World Series. And the fan base in San Francisco knew it, saying, hey, all those championships belong in New York. There's never been a San Francisco one. And the Texas Rangers had never appeared in a World Series. So 2010, while the Giants franchise had won, there's never been a San Francisco title before that. So you knew that was something that we were never going to see before. Some franchise, some fan base was going to have the moment they never thought was possible. The previous time that happened, 1980, when the Philadelphia Phillies and the Kansas City Royals locked antlers. Granted, the city of Philadelphia had seen championships with the A's, but never the Phillies. Phillies had never won. Ironically, the A's moved to Kansas City, but couldn't win there, but the Royals did. The previous time before that, 1920. You can look it up. So basically, in the last 1920, Cleveland played Brooklyn. That was the last time two teams that had never won the World Series had faced off. In the last 100 years, you've had Kansas City versus Philadelphia, San Francisco versus Texas. The only two times in the last 100 years that two teams that have never won the World Series played each other. That's fun. That's drama. And it's two teams in cool stadiums. That's something we should be absolutely aiming for. And I bet you if I said to not just the casual baseball fan, but for those of you who are listening to my damn show in the middle of December, that if I said, yeah, do you know what I want? I want a Mariners Padres World Series. I guarantee you more than one of you would roll your eyes and say, yeah, but who would watch that? And my friends, isn't that part of the problem? Hey, let's hear from our good friends over at FanDuel. You know what FanDuel is. Get ready to tackle NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. Isn't it odd that baseball has to lean on the big markets? If I said I want to see a San Diego Seattle World Series, I bet some of you would, a bunch of you would say, yeah, but what would be the ratings? Who would watch that? I mean, you had two underdogs in the World Series a couple of years ago with Texas and Arizona, and people complained about that matchup. Like, who cares? Texas, Arizona. Geez, what are the ratings on that one going to be? And then, of course, when it was New York and Los Angeles, those same people complained, oh, geez, it's big market teams every time. But the drama, if you're a fan in baseball, if a series between San Diego and Seattle should be off the charts. And other sports seem to figure this out. Isn't Kansas City the big, huge draw in the NFL? Hasn't Green Bay been a gigantic draw in the NFL? Hasn't New York been a vast sea of suck for a while in the NFL? I don't really follow the NFL, so I mean, it just seems like with the exception of an occasional giant Super Bowl, it seems like the Jets of the Giants can't get out of their own way. And yet casual sports fans are, oh, I'm a big Green Bay fan. I'm a big fan of, Kansas City, whatever. The like huge attention paid to not exactly the biggest markets. And in basketball, you have the biggest star playing in Cleveland. You had big stars playing in San Antonio or Milwaukee. The Bay Area was able to have a dynasty. It wasn't always about LA and New York, and Lord knows it's not been about the Knicks. But why is in baseball it's always, well, if it's not the Northeast, or if it's not Yankees, Dodgers, or if it's not the Red Sox or Mets, we don't know what to do. We have no idea how to market it. Figure that out. Figure out the nice stories. Figure out the ways you can get people hooked on that. The fact that I could say Seattle and San Diego would make a fantastic matchup of the World Series. Make it so that doesn't sound obscenely weird. And by the way, if you're a baseball fan, over the years, I've gotten people that ask me questions about, what do you think about the fact that the ratings were so low on this series? The ratings were so low on that series. And I'm like, why would I care? I mean, am I a salesman for Tide? Am I selling ad space from Ford? What do I care about the ratings? I want to see good baseball. And I think the drama of San Diego versus Seattle and the stars in that would be great baseball. Oh, but the ratings. Okay. Fine. Well, I don't care. I care about good baseball. I care about great stories. It's up to baseball to figure out how to market it, but you have my eyeballs, and chances are if I have your ears right now, you're a big fan. I want to see great matchups. I like to see great storylines. I like the narrative. I liked the narrative a few years ago that it was Dusty Baker's turn to win a World Series as a manager. I like the storyline of Bruce Bochy taking a Rangers team and putting the final flourish on his Hall of Fame career. I like narratives, and there would be so many great narratives of a San Diego Seattle World Series. Stop and think about that. What matchup between teams would be one where you say, hey, we're about to see something we've never seen before. I don't know what you thought about the Texas versus Arizona World Series. The first game was great in game one of that World Series was great, and the clinching game was great. The middle games were okay. They weren't terrible. They weren't bad. They weren't that memorable. But when the Rangers won, you knew you were watching a team win the World Series that had never won it before. The same thing when Washington topped Houston in 2019. You're watching a franchise that had never won it before. And in 2017, I won't bring that up. But hey, the Astros won a World Series in 2022. I want to see that matchup. I want to see matchups that are generational. And imagine having two of them clash. That's the kind of drama I want. Now, of course, there's one other kind of drama in the matchup I want, and two of you brought it up. A's and Rays. But that's a different story. I do want an ALCS between the A's and Rays, just so they can figure out where the hell they're going to play. All right, everyone. Well, hey, thanks for those of you who are jumped into the live feed here. I'm going to do one more episode this weekend, and then we may be cutting back down to 3 episodes a week starting next week, but I'm going to be doing all throughout Christmas and everything. We're going to be brand new episodes coming up, including the new Suffering Index and a couple of new wrap-ups of 2024 and looks towards 2025. So follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called now, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. It's Sully Baseball on Blue Sky, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Trying to preach the gospel of a San Diego Seattle World Series. This has been Locked On MLB. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Good night, everyone, and you can call me Sully.